All right, y'all, here we go with another crazy one. But before we get into it, always remember, this is real. It's real life, real stories, real situations with real people. So respect that. This is a missing girl found in the most unexpected way. Let's check it out.
Here County 911, where is your husband?
Somebody else is on the phone. Hello?
Hello, Douglas County 911.
Hi. I have a young lady at my house right now, and she says her name is Jamie Kloss.
Have you seen her photo, ma'am?
Yes, it is her. I 100% think it is her.
Sheriff's Office, who's inside?
It was the night of October 14th, 2018 in Barron County, Wisconsin, when the...
That is my birthday, October 14th. Whoa, this just starts out so weird, like it was meant for me to watch this video.
Kloss family, consisting of James, Denise, and their daughter, 13-year-old Jamie, went to bed after a day like any other. They had no idea they were being watched. By the morning, the house would be void of life, with 2 family members found brutally murdered, and the third missing. When officers arrived at the house, they found the door smashed open. First responders decided to enter the home.
317 Marin, where'd it ping to exactly? Okay. Knock like you got a pair and then announce we'll have to go in.
Somebody's down. Somebody's down. Sheriff's Office! Sheriff's Office!
Indicating the voicemail that
Sheriff's Office!
You don't know that. There were several voices.
Sheriff's Office! Who's inside?
They discovered a body just inside the kitchen door. James Kloss was already dead by the time they arrived, having been shot in the face. They found a shotgun shell discarded by his foot. Medical professionals later deemed his injuries to be quickly lethal. Right away, the 3 officers on the scene realized that they will need additional help.
I believe we're going to need ERT. The store has been kicked in. It looks like the male that's down answered the door. I don't know if we're missing somebody or not from the scene. There's a shotgun shell, but I don't see a shotgun. Go grab a long gun.
Okay.
One at a time.
Yep.
Quickly.
The carnage was far from over. Vigilant for potential danger, police proceeded into the house to see if there was anyone they could help. They didn't make it far before they found a second body.
Over there, dude. We got a dead body in this one. We got a body in here, too.
Do you see a shotgun?
I do not.
Okay.
Looks like there's brain matter. Dude, something happened. There's doors kicked in right here. You want to double check? I'm assuming this person is deceased right here. There's one on the floor right here.
They had just found the body of Denise Kloss, James's wife and mother to Jamie. That made 2 bodies accounted for, but there was no sign of Jamie. After the grisly discoveries, police feared the worst, but maintained a shred of hope that maybe Jamie was alive. The race was on to find her before it was too late. After police cleared the house and established that the killer was no longer inside, EMTs were able to enter and assess the victims. James and Denise were both pronounced dead, and medical personnel assured officers that nothing could have been done to save them.
So, no life-saving measures needed?
No.
Okay.
Adding to the strangeness of the crime was the lack of physical evidence. Despite scouring the crime scene, police were left with nothing but several shotgun shells and the damage done to the doors. The killer left no hair, blood, footprints, or tire tracks. But there...
What did he use to kick that door? You see the lock still out, like, meaning it was locked. What did he... How did... You know what I mean? That don't look like the door you just give a good kick to. What did he use? But maybe he did. Maybe he got a heck of a foot, a field goal kicker foot.
There was also no indication of Jamie's fate. It was as if she had simply vanished. Prior to the terrible crime, the Klosses were an average middle-class family from the Midwest. There was absolutely nothing to suggest they would soon be victim to such a gruesome fate. Both James and Denise were longtime employees of Jenny O Turkey Store. James was said to be reserved and kept to himself, but not in an unpleasant way. Denise was described as an overall nice woman who was known to dote on her daughter. The Clauses had no known enemies, and no one who knew them could imagine why they'd been targeted. At the time of her parents' murder, Jamie attended 8th grade at Riverview Middle School. Her grandmother described her as shy, quiet, and sweet, and said she was very attached to her mother. Family members and acquaintances alike remarked that Jamie spent a lot of time on her phone. This phone, and Jamie's online footprint, would be law enforcement's first point of investigation. When police examined her cell phone, they found that she was logged into both Snapchat and Facebook accounts. Officers were hopeful that they might link her to perhaps a secret illicit boyfriend, but found no evidence supporting the theory. Similarly, no one knew of her meeting someone online. Based on the hopeful assumption that Jamie was still alive, the Barron County Sheriff's Department instigated a multi-organization search, including the FBI and National Missing Persons Program. But with only 3 expended shotgun shells as evidence, solving the case and finding Jamie, alive or dead, was not going to be easy. First, law enforcement established that no one remained in the vicinity of the crime scene, searching on foot and also going so far as to make use of thermal imaging drones. The day after the murders, 4 K9 units were called in to patrol the area surrounding the Kloss property. Police hoped that this would help narrow down where the perpetrator may have headed after the attack on James and Denise, and perhaps even give them a lead to find Jamie. Though the search was extensive and dogs were introduced to Jamie's scent, nothing was found. Still, they didn't give up. The K9 search was followed by daytime foot investigations of the area, the first of which included over 80 civilian volunteers. When the first group found nothing, a subsequent search took place. In a stunning display of community support, over 2,000 volunteers signed up to help. Sadly, despite the huge turnout, the only potential evidence discovered was a single children's-sized sandal that police soon determined did not belong to Jamie. Biological evidence was also sought out. Swabs were taken from both bodies in the hope of finding DNA left by the killer. While none was found on the bodies, a partial sequence was recovered from one of the expended shotgun shells. While this might have seemed exciting at first, the sample was of limited use in the absence of any person of interest. At least investigators now had something to compare to eventual suspects. Police interviewed and swabbed all locals on offender registries. Their DNA was compared to what was found at the crime scene, but still no match was found. In a last-ditch effort to come up with suspects, video surveillance was set up at the Kloss property on the off chance the perpetrator returned to the crime scene. The search for Jamie barreled on. When the digital forensics, K9 units, foot search, interviews, and volunteer manhunt failed to turn up active leads, investigators re-examined video footage from the night of the crime.
That one car was heading out as we were coming.
Well,
but they yielded.
on camera.
Camera, yep.
In an exciting turn of events, investigators had their first real clue, a potential suspect's car on camera. Following the 911 call and as first responders rushed to the Kloss house, they had passed a car traveling in the opposite direction. The driver pulled over to allow the emergency vehicles to pass before continuing on. There was nothing to indicate this vehicle was suspicious, despite its proximity to the crime scene, but police were excited by the prospect of a new lead. The footage was immediately downloaded and analyzed. Police were hoping to retrieve a license plate along with the color, make, and model of the vehicle. Ideally, this would lead them to the owner and even a suspect. Unfortunately, the information gained from the footage was disappointing at best. None of the captured footage was of high enough quality to retrieve a license plate or determine who.
That's what I was sitting here thinking. I was like, they got some good technology. I wasn't ruling it out that they have it because they probably do, but I was like, man, how are they going to see that? You're passing by, unless they got a camera in the back. Other than that, you're passing by that vehicle. How are you going to get any information from it? Plate, color, even a face, anything. You're not. All you get is 2 lights to know it was a vehicle. That's it.
Who the owner or driver might be.
I downloaded the video. I couldn't get anything. Like the headlights were blocking it, and I don't even know if he even had a front license plate.
Okay.
It was looked like just a red four-door car, kind of like an Impala type of look with maybe a missing rear driver head.
Search results.
The most they could.
That's good that he was even to obtain that. Possibly red, maybe Impala. I didn't think about the front license plate. That's also would have been helpful if they could have gotten that. But you know what I mean? I guess some people are good enough to be able to tell by the lights, even the light coming from the lights. Some people can tell. My son used to be really good at that.
Could narrow it down was that the car was perhaps a red or black Dodge sedan, possibly a Charger. While this was not nearly as specific as police had hoped, it still helped to rule out suspects. With this new information, they began questioning all family members, co-workers, and persons of interest about their vehicles. With so little going in their favor, the FBI offered a $25,000 reward for information leading to Jamie's recovery. To show their support, the Jennie-O turkey store where James and Denise had worked matched the amount. But despite the grand total reward of $50,000, none of the tips that came forth brought investigators any closer to finding Jamie. Tips were constantly called in to the police about teenage girls seen at gas stations and rest stops, and a plethora of cars deemed suspicious were reported. Police dutifully investigated these leads, always reaching what had come to be the expected conclusion. The girl in question was never Jamie. Some residents took to Facebook to express their opinions, several even alleging that the police had it all wrong, and in fact the killer was right there in front of them all, Jamie. These online sleuths alleged that Jamie should be the prime suspect in the investigation into her parents' murder. In one such post, the user wrote, "Y'all gonna have to apologize when she found. Guilty." Still, a different user answered with some logic. The door was shot in. If she was in on it, why wouldn't she just let them in? Despite these rumors, police didn't suspect Jamie was involved for various reasons, including the fact that the door was shot in and that she didn't have access to a firearm, to the best of their knowledge.
Okay, so the door was shot in. That makes a lot more sense. I guess I missed hearing that part of it. Because I was wondering, ain't nobody just kick that in. If you're going to kick that in, you're giving me time to go get my weapon, hearing that somebody kick it at my door and be prepared for you by the time you get on the inside. So I missed that part. Good catch now.
They also dismissed the idea of Jamie having an accomplice kill her parents and aid in her escape when they failed to find evidence of a boyfriend or secret online relationship. The simple fact was that Jamie's closest confidant was her mother, Denise, and she had no reason to want to kill her or her father. Things were looking grim indeed when approximately 2 weeks after Jamie was declared missing, the cameras set up around the Kloss property captured an unauthorized person entering the residence. Finally, there was a break in the case. Eager to have a suspect, officers raced to the scene and apprehended Kyle Jankianis inside the house. When searched, police found multiple items of the Kloss family in his pockets, including 2 pairs of Jamie's underwear. Kyle was immediately taken into custody, and investigators expected that, at long last, they were one step closer to finding Jamie. But despite the very suspicious circumstances he was found under, Kyle offered up an unexpected reason for being at the Kloss house.
Any child comes up missing, it pisses me off. And it makes me want to go hunt the person to find them.
He went on to describe his theory and perceived qualifications to involve himself in the investigation. Note Kyle's posture here. He's leaning back as far away from the officers as possible. His feet are tucked tightly underneath him, and his fingers are tightly interlaced to his chest area. While anyone who is arrested would be expected to feel anxious and show signs of nervousness, the detectives will certainly take note of this. Though it's often wise to start off with some rapport building at the commencement of an interview, Kyle didn't hold back when asked why he was at the house.
Because in all reality, I had this suspicion that it was a setup. So I walked out there to actually find out. And sometimes my suspicion is right. A lot of times is I can feel things that other people can't. I can also a lot of times see stuff that other people can't. And, you know, it comes with my place's territory. Places.
Is he trying to say or imply what I think he's trying to imply, that he has some type of sixth sense or something, or the ability to, I don't know. Y'all think that's got to be the weirdest things investigators have ever encountered right there.
Yeah, it's the birth thing. But yeah.
In an attempt to reel the conversation in, officers pressed for information about Kyle's involvement. By way of defense, Kyle claimed that the crime was not his style.
I'm just not one that uses guns. I use knives. I'd rather chop people's heads off. But I don't, because I hold back.
Officers interviewed Kyle for approximately 3 hours, during which time he offered very few straight answers and was prone to going off on tangents, even when asked simple questions like why he cared so much about the Kloss case.
Why? Because it's a missing teenage girl. Why is that goddamn important to me? For one, child. All child named goddamn die.
Kyle just made quite a few convincing statements, and overall, he's trying to present himself as a vigilante. Or at least, it seems that this is how he sees himself. In reality, he may have some sort of delusional thinking. He may see himself as the hero searching for the girl. Kyle responded in a similarly inconsistent, meandering manner when asked what he planned to do with Jamie's clothes.
Yeah, I did. But that really wasn't to take her clothes, because in all reality, you guys actually caught me in the middle, and just so happened I walked out with him. So, you know, my plans for those clothes, because in all reality, if you guys can ever find Jamie, somebody else could have been him.
Kyle changed his...
Yeah. You reached a whole nother level of weird right there, buddy. A whole new level of weird. So you just went in that house just to say, you know, somebody might need these. You know, do you know what? Somebody might need these underwear, you know, if they never find her. I bet somebody could use... No.
His explanation mid-thought, stating first that he didn't mean to take the clothes, then that he was going to give the clothes to a different child in need. This led to an extended explanation of how he planned to open a homeless shelter to help those less fortunate, though he didn't explain concrete details of how he intended to do so. While this was definitely odd, it did not in any way implicate Kyle in the original crime. Still, investigators continued the interview to make sure they didn't miss anything. Unfortunately, Kyle did not become any more consistent as the conversation continued. Once again changing his story about the underwear, he stated that they were for himself, not for inappropriate reasons, but rather because he wished to be a woman and pursue gender-affirming surgery.
I plan on getting the goddamn operation. And then I am gonna go out there and protect all the goddamn transgenders that are dying too, that are getting killed. Because it's all about a fucking goddamn hate crime.
The police were only satisfied when Kyle offered them the first straight answer of the night.
Do you personally, though, have any information related to the incident or her whereabouts?
No. No.
With that, the only viable lead so far was dead. After this, morale surrounding the case was at an all-time low. Nearly 3 months since Jamie Kloss disappeared, people began to come to terms with the idea that answers might never be found. The case never closed. Things were looking hopeless. That is, until January 10th, 2019. One snowy afternoon in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, Jean Nutter was in for quite the surprise while taking her dog on a routine walk.
Douglas County 911.
Hi. I have a young lady at my house right now, and she says her name is Jamie Kloss.
Okay, have you seen her photo, ma'am?
Yes, it is her. I 100% think it is her.
Jean was just a few doors down from her house when she saw a young girl in the middle of the street. Immediately, she noticed that something was wrong. Even though it was cold out, the ground covered with snow, the girl was only wearing a hoodie, tank top, leggings, and shoes that were massively too big for her feet. In addition to being far too large, the girl had the right shoe on her left foot and vice versa, like she'd put them on in a hurry. Jean didn't see any physical injuries, but noted that the girl's hair was very messy, even matted at the back, and that she looked exhausted. Jean also thought she was possibly in shock. Before Jean had a chance to ask if she was okay, the girl hurried over and announced that she was Jamie Kloss. She told Jean that she didn't know where she was, but that she wanted to go home. Jean didn't waste any time with further questions and jumped into action. What was once a simple dog walk was now a rescue mission.
What do you do in that situation, y'all? Because our first instincts is to wrap her up, shield her, put her in a car, drive her to the police station or whatever. But I've also seen situations. That's why I'm posing this question, because I'm always torn. I've seen that be a setup. I've seen that be a setup, and somebody think they're helping someone who's setting them up. I don't know. I have to always ask that.
Jamie identified a house 2 doors down from Jean's as the place where she'd been held captive for the last 88 days. The man who had taken her was gone right now, Jamie said, but hadn't told her when he would be back. Wishing to put as much distance as she safely could between Jamie and the kidnapper, Jean decided to take Jamie to a neighbor's house further down the street instead of her own home. She recalled putting an arm around Jamie and not pressing her for more questions, overtaken by the urge to protect her. Hyper-aware that the murderer of James and Denise Kloss could reappear at any moment, Jean knocked on a neighbor's door. Huddling in the cold, she and Jamie awaited a response, watching the road for approaching vehicles. No one answered the door, and Jean and Jamie were forced to move on. This time, they chose to cut through backyards to better stay out of sight of the road. The next house they went to was that of the Kacinskas family. Peter Kacinskas was confused when he heard the knock at the back of the house, and only became more so when he saw his neighbor outside with a girl he didn't recognize. Once inside, the first order of business was to contact the police. Jean and Peter made the call, leaving Peter's wife Kristen to comfort Jamie for a moment. As it turned out, I found Jamie Kloss were the magic words to get a huge police response as soon as possible. But that was very little information to go on, and the operator attempted to learn as much as possible about the situation before first responders arrived. Jean was able to tell her the most.
I was walking my dog, and we were almost home, and she was walking towards me, crying, saying, "You gotta help me, you gotta help me."
Okay.
So I didn't want to go into my cabin because it's too close to Patterson's house.
And she said her name is Jamie Kloss?
Yep. And when I walked into this house, they recognized her immediately from photos. She didn't know where she was. When I saw her, she was saying, "Where am I? Where am I?" And I said, "You're in Wisconsin. So if the cops could get her soon, we would blow."
I have many deputies headed that way. I'm going to keep you on the line.
Okay.
And she said, "I am Jamie Kloss."
Yes. She said, "He killed my parents. I want to go home. Help me."
Ma'am, my deputy, she just wants you to lock the doors.
Okay, they would like us to lock the doors and not open the doors for anybody but them.
Yep.
Despite the perilous situation, Jamie, Jean, and the Kacinskas would have to wait a tense half hour before the first patrol cars arrived at the residence.
I want to ask them, though, how did that changes everything? That changes your life. And I'm talking about the lady who who ultimately came across Jamie. Like, you just found out that there's this person who kidnapped a girl that lives, what, 2 doors down from you? That like changes. Your life is never the same after that. Your neighborhood is never the same after that. I wonder what was the follow-up for them after. What did they do after that?
Together, the Kasinskas and Jean focused on making Jamie feel as safe as possible. Ensuring Jamie's safety included Peter Kasinskis retrieving and loading the 16-gauge shotgun he kept for hunting season. He took up a position guarding the front door in case Jamie's assailant discovered where she was and tried to reclaim her. When the first squad car arrived, the deputy told Peter to stay at his post, while taking up a similar defensive position at the back door. While they waited, Jamie told Jean what she remembered from the night of her parents' murders. She said, "He came into our house. He shot my dad. My mom called 911. He shot my mom. He took me. I didn't know him." Finally, after a torturous wait, police made it to the house.
Hey, somebody's here.
Okay, wait a minute.
It's a police officer, though.
You can see?
Yeah.
10-4.
Yeah.
Hey, was there a deputy that knocked on the door, or you just saw him in the driveway?
They're in the house. The cops are in the house.
Oh, they're in there with you?
Yeah, they just came in.
Perfect. Then I can let you go as long as the deputies are with you guys.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Good job.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
It was a top priority to secure the area around the captor's house, and roadblocks were set to intercept him if he returned home. Even though Jamie didn't appear to be hurt, protocol stated that she be taken to the hospital for assessment. She departed the Kasinskas in the care of a female officer, with another squad car following close behind as extra security. In an eerie echo of October 15th, the car carrying Jamie passed a single vehicle traveling in the opposite direction as they left the neighborhood. It was dark red, an older model, possibly a Ford. Even though Jamie didn't recognize it for sure, the officer driving reported the sighting to colleagues remaining at the scene.
22, 18, 19, I got a red car that just passed me.
That car is coming towards you. Yeah, I see it. I'm going to see if there's a male driving. Yeah, it's a male driving. I'm going to do a traffic stop on it. It's got no rear license plate light.
At the hospital, doctors confirmed that Jamie had no physical injuries. Once she was examined and her clothes were taken as evidence, Jamie finally got the chance to tell her story. On October 15th, Jamie said she was up late when she saw a vehicle coast into the driveway with its lights off. It wasn't uncommon for drivers to use the Kloss property as a turnaround spot, but Jamie felt something wasn't right and woke up her parents. James went downstairs to investigate. Shortly after, Jamie heard him shouting, followed by a gunshot. The Kloss dog started barking, then ran and hid. Not knowing whether her father was dead or alive, Jamie and her mother fled to the downstairs bathroom, locked the door, and did their best to barricade themselves in. She recalled huddling in the bathtub, clutched in her mother's arms, as the shooter worked to smash in the door. Denise was on the phone with a 911 dispatcher when the attacker broke into the bathroom.
County 911, where is your husband?
Somebody else is my phone. Hello? Somebody. Hello?
Jamie says he tried to rip the phone out of her mother's hand, but she was able to hang on until Jamie yelled at her to just give him the phone. Denise did, and the attacker flung it into the hallway, then gave Denise a roll of duct tape. He instructed her to tape Jamie's mouth shut. When Denise didn't do a good enough job for the shooter, Jamie says he grabbed the tape back and did it himself, wrapping the tape over her mouth and all the way around her head. He bound her hands behind her back and taped her ankles together, then dragged her out of her mother's arms and the bathtub. Powerless, Jamie was forced to watch as the man shot her mother point blank in the head. She was given no chance to mourn as he dragged her through the hallway and out of the house, past the body of her father. The shooter took her back to his car and shoved her in the trunk. Jamie estimates she spent about 2 hours restrained in the car. But the nightmare was far from over. Jamie would be forced to spend the next 3 months in close proximity to her parents' killer, terrified that she would meet the same end. Back at the house on Eau Claire Acres Circles, police learned the residence where Jamie was held belonged to Patrick Patterson. They were able to reach him via phone and, unexpectedly, found him very cooperative. Patrick confirmed that he owned the house, but said he was only there for a few hours or overnight on weekends. He said during the week he stayed with his girlfriend in order to shorten his commute to work. The rest of the time, the house was solely inhabited by his son, Jake. Patrick was unable to tell officers where his son might currently be, but thanks to the report from the officer escorting Jamie to the hospital, that didn't turn out to be a problem. Police pulled over the red Ford entering the area just outside the Patterson house. The driver identified himself as Jake Thomas Patterson. He also made a single shocking admission that confirmed growing suspicions, stating, "I did it."
You're still being detained until we figure out what's going on, you understand? Mm-hmm. You say your house is back that way? It's around the corner. Around that corner back there? On the right.
After just a few moments and a quick conference between colleagues, it's determined that something different will be done with Jake.
You're no longer detained. You're under arrest now, okay? Sure. For what? Oh, they'll tell you when they get up to the officer.
Jake Thomas Patterson was 21 years old at the time of Jamie Kloss's abduction. He lived full-time at the house his father owned at Eau Claire Acres Circle, but would occasionally visit his mother in Hagen, Wisconsin to use her internet to search for jobs. Still, Jake self-identified as an honest, hard-working guy. No one could have ever suspected him of having dangerous or criminal tendencies, never mind being involved in a crime that had shaken the Barron County community to its core. In a strange twist of fate, Kristen Kasinskis, who sheltered Jamie at her home and was a middle school teacher, had actually known Jake when he was a preteen student. However, she hadn't even known he was her neighbor until the police arrested him. After high school, Jake was briefly in the Marines before being discharged due to a medical issue. Patrick Patterson said the discharge had a profound effect and that his son struggled to find a new life path. As a result, Jake had a hard time holding a job, his most recent being at the Saputo Cheese Factory, where he was employed for a grand total of 2 days. This detail will be important shortly. As soon as Jake identified himself to police, he was taken into custody. After being read his rights and electing not to have a lawyer present, Jake launched into his description of the lead-up to the crime. Prior to the night of October 15th, Jake said he drove to the Kloss residence twice with the intention of kidnapping Jamie. Both times he decided that the circumstances weren't right. The first time, the driveway was full of other cars. Jake quickly decided to come back when there were fewer potential witnesses. He returned just 2 days later under cover of night and actually pulled into the driveway, but left when he saw the lights in the house were on and the Klosses were clearly awake.
What would make you carry this out, though? Like what in your mind clicks and says, you know what? I'm gonna do this. And I'm gonna do this no matter who's there. And I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna take this one out, and I'm gonna take this one out, and then I'm gonna get like, what? How, bro? We need to study their brains. I'm telling you, man.
Furthermore, Jake said he timed his crime to ensure he would have the Eau Claire house to himself for the maximum amount of time. He kidnapped Jamie on a Monday, giving himself the entire week to secure her in the house before his father returned sometime the following weekend. When asked how he managed to leave almost no DNA evidence at the scene, Jake revealed that he had thoroughly thought out and planned the crime. He shaved his entire head and face prior, wore 2 gloves on each hand, and said he was really careful about touching things. This, combined with the black ski mask he wore, prevented any hair being left behind as evidence. He even went so far as to wipe down the shotgun shells he used, removing fingerprints and DNA except for the small amount police discovered. In total, Jake estimated that he was only at the residence for about 4 minutes. He drew a diagram from memory, including the positions of each of the family members and where he killed them. His motive for the gruesome crime was horrifying, but would only be revealed later in the conversation. Before delving back into deeper details of the crime itself, Jake took the opportunity to confirm that he was driving the car that pulled over for the emergency vehicles on October 15th. Jamie was already in the trunk, meaning that a single traffic stop could have prevented the following 3 months of suffering for both Jamie and her remaining family. Police also learned that even if they had been able to enhance the video of his car, they would not have been able to connect it to Jake. To further obscure his identity, Jake had gone to a different town to steal the license plate off a stranger's truck. The night of the crime, he switched his rear plate with the stolen one and removed the front plate entirely. Once he returned home, he put his original plates back on. When discussing where evidence might be found, Jake stated that he burned many of the incriminating items, including his ski mask, Jamie's clothes, and the tape from her wrists, ankles, and mouth. He destroyed these the same night that he brought her to Eau Claire, giving her a set of his own pajamas to wear until he went out to buy her clothes. Strangely, though, he only disposed of some of the items this way. The pants he wore that night were found with his dirty laundry, and the stolen license plate was stowed in a trash can in the garage. The shotgun shells he'd brought to the Claus house but didn't use were found in the living room. The steel-toed boots he wore were left in his bedroom. When the police asked why Jake didn't finish covering his tracks, he told them that he figured if the police made it to his house, they were going to find Jamie. Therefore, he saw no point hiding the rest of the evidence. The more obvious evidence, like Jamie's clothes, tape, and ski mask, however, could have raised questions from his father and needed to go. In regards to the execution of the crime, Jake clearly undertook a large amount of preparation. In addition to scouting the house and changing his license plate, Jake removed the escape latch from his trunk and disabled the interior dome light. Despite this meticulous planning, Jake insisted that wasn't really the case. "I didn't know what I was doing at all," he said. "Like I didn't plan this out at all." In fact, Jake said he expected to be caught a whole lot sooner, likely the same night as the crime. After 2 weeks, though, he started to think he might get away with it. When the conversation turned to the practical aspects of Jamie's captivity, the already unusual case was revealed to be even stranger.
I think he would have gotten away with it. Only reason he was found is because she escaped, obviously. She doesn't escape. This case was cold. I know it was only 88 days, but this case was pretty much cold at that point. He would have gotten away with this, or at least for however long.
He drew this diagram to show exactly where in the house he kept her in. Jake said that most of the time Jamie was not restrained, nor were the doors to the house locked. Jake said that he never took precautions against Jamie leaving. He just made her go under the bed and told her to be quiet when he wanted to go out. What he didn't mention, however, was that the space under the bed was incredibly tiny and cramped, and that he would leave her there for up to 12 hours at a time without access to any food or water or bathroom breaks. The greatest precaution he took was to block off the bed with plastic tote boxes and barbells, even though he knew Jamie could have moved them. Shockingly, Jake even kept Jamie hidden this way when other people were in the house. Even more surprisingly, it worked. Patrick Patterson visited his son many times during Jamie's captivity, but said he had no clue she was there. As far as he knew, it was just him and his son in the house. Jake said he specifically relied on Jamie's fear of him to keep her in line. At first, he told her that he would kill her if she misbehaved, though he said he later assured her he wasn't going to do that, but would still be very angry if she misbehaved. Likely fearful that she would meet the same end as her parents, Jamie obeyed. Jake said that up until her escape on the 10th of January, quote, "There hasn't been literally any resistance at all. All the same, he said he knew she must have escaped when he returned home on January 10th and found the house empty. He'd been out circling the area searching for her when he was finally caught. During the whole time he kept her captive, Jake said that he and Jamie didn't discuss her situation. Instead, they spent time, in his words, hanging out. They played board games, he said, and he offered her marijuana and vodka, which she declined. The one time the news came on, Jake quickly turned it off, but not before a mention of Jamie's abduction flashed across the screen. Hearing about the investigation would, he feared, give her hope of being rescued and make her more eager to escape. As you're probably wondering yourself, officers also asked Jake what his long-term plans were in regard to Jamie. Jake responded that he, quote, thought the longer the time went, maybe he and Jamie could live a life together, and even mentioned how he thought that maybe after a year, they could get an apartment together. Once again, Jake displayed a serious lack of introspection. His
lack of this fool is crazy. This fool in his mind thought, you know what? She'll eventually fall for me. I done kidnapped her, did this, but you know what? She'll find it in her heart to see that I'm a good guy, and she'll fall for me, and we'll live happily ever after. He's crazy. He's beyond off.
His concept of living a life together with Jamie suggests that he thought she would ultimately forgive him for the murders and kidnapping. At long last, the interrogation came to the topic of Jake's motive. In a distressingly casual manner, Jake told his interviewers, quote, "Obviously, my thoughts or whatever before I did this were about right, but you know, it's like f***ing terrible what I did, so I couldn't. And I didn't really want to do anything like that with her." Later on in the interview, he also stated that, "I would never kill or even hurt her." Like Jake's claim that he didn't plan the crime, this statement was in direct contradiction with his actions. Though Jake said he would never hurt Jamie, he very obviously already had. Jamie was physically intact, but Jake traumatized her by forcing her to experience the brutal murders of her mother and father. As if that wasn't enough, he then kept her in a state of constant fear for 88 harrowing days. Thankfully, Jake's statement that he never assaulted Jamie was mostly corroborated in her own statements. Jamie said that Jake would yell at her and once hit her really hard on the back, but this was the only inappropriate contact. He did, however, make Jamie sleep in his bed with him every night except for the first night when he fell asleep on the couch. But the question remained, why had he chosen Jamie? And the answer to this is perhaps the most chilling aspect of the case. When speaking with officers, Jake admitted that he had always thought some weird shit. He said he knew it wasn't normal, but had been unable to shake the idea of taking a young girl to, quote, just like keep her in since shortly after his military discharge. Until Jamie, though, Jake said he never had specific plans to take anyone, but did sometimes think hypothetically about how he would manage it. The only thing that he thought might work, he said, was home invasion. But why Jamie? When asked how he met her, Jake replied, "I didn't. I just saw her." It was ultimately random chance that out of countless potential targets, Jake chose Jamie. Making the crime even more horrific was the fact that Jake didn't even know James and Denise's names until he watched news coverage of his heinous act. Jake's fateful first sight of Jamie occurred in early October, about 2 weeks before he abducted her. It was the morning of his first day of work at the Saputo cheese factory when Jake saw Jamie outside her house, getting on the school bus. He said he knew right away that she was the one he was going to take. If someone is exhibiting the following behaviors, these should be perceived as red flags that may indicate the individual is a child predator, showing excessive interest in a child, isolating a child from friends, family, or other adults, employing tactics to gain a child's trust and establish a relationship, encouraging a child to keep secrets from parents or guardians, engaging in inappropriate conversation with a child or exposing a child to explicit material, and avoiding relationships with people their own age. It's crucial to remember that not all individuals displaying these signs are offenders, but if you observe multiple red flags or have serious concerns about someone's behavior around children, it's essential that you report your suspicions to the appropriate authorities immediately. Child safety is a top priority, and early intervention can prevent potential harm. Following his interview, Jake Thomas Patterson was officially charged. But the story didn't end there. A month after his arrest, Jake attempted to contact Jamie from jail. In the same envelope as an innocuous-seeming letter to his father, Jake also included a handwritten letter intended for Jamie. He asked Patrick to deliver it for him. Thankfully, all of Jake's outgoing mail was inspected by law enforcement, and the letter was confiscated.
Give that joker another charge for that. I don't care. Give him another charge. I don't even know what type of charge it could be, but he need another charge for that. I'm sorry. Give him 2.
Specifics of what he wanted to say to her have been kept confidential, but a subsequent attempt to communicate with Jamie and her family might offer hints as to what Jake wanted to say. Shortly after his first letter failed to breach prison walls, Jake began correspondence with a journalist who was curious about his motives. In one letter, Jake answered the journalist's questions, and it was very similar to what he had told police. Ironically, one part of his letter reads, I tried to give them everything, wasn't completely honest, so they didn't have to interview Jamie. They did anyways and hurt her more for no reason. In large bubble letters, Jake wrote, I'm so sorry, Jamie, for everything. Then, in his regular handwriting, he added, I know it doesn't mean much. Unlike his first attempt, this letter wasn't confiscated. Jamie's relatives were notified, but did not make any public comments. After this, Jake did not try to contact Jamie again. Soon after, Jamie was honored by Wisconsin lawmakers when she won the Hometown Hero Award for her bravery escaping from Jake. At Jake's trial, Jamie's attorney read out a statement from her. Part of it stated, Jake Patterson took a lot of things that I love away from me. It makes me the most sad that he took away my mom and dad. I love my mom and dad very much, and they love me very much. They did all they could to make me happy and protect me. He took them away from me forever. He took them away from me in a way that will always leave me with a horrifying memory. I have to have an alarm in the house now just so I can sleep. It's too hard for me to go out in public. I get scared and I get anxious. But there are some things Jake Patterson can never take from me. He can't take my freedom. He thought that he could own me, but he was wrong. On May 24, 2019, Jake Thomas Patterson pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree intentional homicide, for which he was given life imprisonment. He was also charged with kidnapping, which added another 25 years jail time to his sentence. These sentences were deemed to run consecutively without the possibility for parole. During his sentencing, the judge referred to Jake as an embodiment of evil. He will be behind bars for the rest of his life. As for Jamie, she currently lives with her aunt and was reunited with her dog.